Welcome to Save the Associations. I'm Sarah Sladek, your host. Save the Associations is all about celebrating and spotlighting the associations that are stepping up in a time of great challenge or change. Whether they are responding to executive orders or modernizing and adapting alongside AI, or making room for the next generation, Gen Z, which now outnumbers the baby boomers in the workforce. In either case, we're focusing on associations who are leading the way in these core areas, taking a moment to share best practices with other associations and celebrate what associations are doing to save themselves from disengagement, decline, or simply falling behind. It's important in a time of change to stay relevant and provide value to members. So thank you for tuning in and for all you're doing to help save the associations. This series is brought to you by XYZ University, a future-focused, next-gen intelligence community building expert. To learn more about XYZ University, please visit xyzuniversity.com. And now, on with the show. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk with you today.
All right, let's jump into the nitty gritty. So in March, IWPA released a position statement saying the organization fully opposed general embargoes, boycotts, tariffs, all the things. And a few months have passed since that statement was made. So I'm just curious to know, what was the member response when the statement was made? And what's it been since then?
Yeah, so IWP has historically supported free trade as a group representing importers. That's kind of our reason for being, right? And we've always viewed the association as being a voice for trade. Of course, communicating that you have to do it legally and you have to, follow all of the laws. But I say that as background because our members are very supportive of the association being, out front when it comes to supporting free trade for something called 232 tariffs, which deal with national security. People, you may have heard it in the context of like aluminum and steel and copper and some other big commodities, but there's a 232 investigation into lumber as well. And there was about a 2-week comment period. And one of those weeks was actually the week we were at our convention. So we needed to hire a lawyer to write these, really robust comments. And we actually had, it was 5 or 6 members that stepped up to help pay for it. We've had members that have jumped on calls, that have done webinars that I have to specifically thank, our legal members. We have 5 law firms. They have helped edit the information that we're sending out, the FAQs. Like we've had a lot of people really pitch in and help the association to ensure that we're not only, doing what we need to do, but that we're getting information out to our members. So it's been, I will say, a really good response. I've gotten a lot of folks that have, on my many, many calls on this topic, congratulated the association for really being proactive and out there and, speaking on behalf of them, which is what they want us to do.
Well, exactly. And I think it's so powerful. Like you mentioned at the beginning, you're a quarter of the staff. So you're a small staff. You've had to be nimble, but undoubtedly, I'm sure this has just been a lot of work, a lot of effort, and it's inspiring to hear that your members stepped up to help with that. I'm
Yeah.
curious, specifically, how have tariffs impacted your members, both in the United States and globally?
It definitely has impacted our members. A lot of it is just uncertainty. So I mentioned we're really small businesses. And so there's been so much uncertainty. It's really, I think, frustrated, particularly the small businesses. To give you a little bit of information about our industry, wood is usually shipped on ships. You have stuff that was already on the water when sort of the first initial round of tariff threats and then implementation happened. So things had already been paid, prices had already been agreed. And, that's one frustration. But because it feels like tariff rates are changing constantly, nobody really knows by the time the product, hits US shores, what is the rate going to be? And so it's that uncertainty that I think has made it really hard for people to plan ahead. And again, setting aside the wood industry, businesses want to be able to plan ahead because that's how you make capital investments. That's how you decide, are you going to hire? Are you going to expand? And I think a lot of people are just sort of freezing those plans right now because they don't know what the next month, 6 month, year is going to look like. I think, a little longer term, there's a lot of people in our industry and a lot of industries, I think, very closely watching some of the legal cases. At the time of filming, you have two cases that are working their way through on IEPA, which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This really gets to the president's ability to unilaterally do those country-specific tariffs. And there's a couple court cases right now that are challenging the president's ability to use IEPA in that way. And so I think, that's going to have implications for our industry, but I think for anyone doing trade, it's going to be really fascinating to watch in real time as we see precedent being established. I will say, from our perspective, there's, again, looking ahead, a lot of statutes that can and will be used on the wood industry. So if IEPA is set aside, the president has been talking recently about using something called Section 122 tariffs. And this would allow the president to essentially set up to 15% tariff on any country he wants for up to 150 days. So that could have real implications, I think, on trade, no matter your industry. And then for us specifically, the biggest impact is actually going to come from something called the 232 investigation, which I mentioned earlier. And that's a specific investigation into timber and derivatives. So basically any sort of wood products. And that's ongoing at the time that we're chatting, but we're expecting that anytime. And it really, again, is unilaterally in the president's hands to be able to make determinations based on recommendations from the Bureau of Industry Security, BIS. So that is honestly the 232 investigation. If you talk to anyone in the wood industry right now, that is probably going to be top of mind because it is only on wood products, that investigation. And so it will have an impact on everything that we sell and everything that you buy. It's a lot of impact to our members now that I'm saying this out loud.
It is a lot. And you mentioned that a lot of your members are small businesses too. So that, adds a whole nother layer to some of this. And incredibly, incredibly challenging on so many levels, undoubtedly. And yes, I have prolonged fixing my deck, which I was supposed to do this month, and it's like, no, we're not doing that right now because of the wood case.
It's fascinating you mentioned that because this is actually something interesting that we saw during the 2008 recession, 2008, 2009, 2010, is when people, like the general populace, is uncertain, right? They're not spending a ton of money. So you see a lot of people not moving, right? They're not going to buy a new house with high interest rates, with economic uncertainty, but they will do home projects to increase the standard of living in their current home because you have less people moving, have less people investing in big things. You might see some more of that like home renovation, but it's more expensive to do that home renovation than it might have been 6 months ago. And so I personally, just from an economic as well as a professional perspective, am going to be very interested to see, like, at the end of 2025, where consumers land.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have to let me know if you end up redoing your deck.
Yes, I will let you know. I will let you know. And I'm curious, just, as a quick follow-up. So obviously a lot of caution in the marketplace that impacts your member businesses. Are you seeing that same caution? Because you mentioned 30 countries you have members in. Are you seeing the same trends globally?
So there's a lot of uncertainty. I travel a great deal in this role, and I was 2 weeks ago in Togo, which is in Africa. It's Western Africa, and there were folks from all over Western Africa, from Europe, and I was asked by every single person
Sure.
what's happening in the United States. Like, we don't know what our business with the US is going to look like. So
Mhm.
can you tell me? And I had to repeatedly be like, I'm not with the US government. I'm private industry. I can't
Right.
look into a crystal ball, because trust me, if I could, that'd be great. But I think there's just a lot of uncertainty globally about what trade is going to look like. And if you are a country that is not China or the United States, and maybe the EU, right? You probably are trading to those three places. That's where a lot of your exports are going. And so if you take one away, or it gets more difficult to export to one, you then need to decide what you do with that, what would be excess capacity, right? Do you produce less? Do you trade more with other places? And so I think you're going to see some people that are going to try to trade more with China and maybe the EU, although there's, from a timber perspective, some new regulations coming into effect in the EU at the end of this year that might make that more difficult. But like, do you export more to China, right? Do
Mm.
you just do less this year? Well, then that has the follow-on impacts in other countries. And so
Oh,
I think there's a lot of heartburn right now around the world about what what does trade with the United States look like.
yeah.
And I think it's compounded by the fact that things change so quickly and are so uncertain that it's not like, okay, I know I have a 30% tariff if I'm trading into the US and I can make decisions based on that, right? Well, is it 30%? And then next week, now I get a 90-day stay, but it's 6 months, not
Yeah.
6 months, 2 months on the water. So, like, do I have to get stuff out now? And the cutting
Mm.
decisions are being made months in advance before you even ship. So it's all of these factors that you can't fit together in any sort of plan, because you
Right.
don't know the sort of end step of what trade with the United States looks like.
Right.
So, a very long-winded way of saying, yes, absolutely. Around the world, our partners are very concerned, in the timber industry at least, about what this year and even, the next 3 years looks like.
Right. Well, you've just opened my mind to a whole lot of things that I didn't even think about in terms of supply chain and all the things, but really fascinating. So you did the position statement. You were saying, this is just kind of the way we do business. We have our things that we stand for. But I'm also curious, just right now, what is IWPA doing just to kind of reassure members, keep them informed, and just be there for your members?
We had a meeting, our entire staff had a meeting just before the inauguration, and we talked about what things might look like this year. Obviously, you only have campaign stuff to go on at that point. And so we talked about, what does association service to our members look like in light of this reality this year? And where we landed is, we never want our members to be uncertain. Within the realm of, there's always going to be uncertainty, right? But I don't ever want a member to read something in the news and be like, what? My association hasn't communicated that to me. What is
Right.
this AIPA thing? Well, what about that court case? Well, this legislation, I've never heard of that, right? It was all about being proactive and very quick in our communications. And we discussed how it wasn't enough to, say, hey, there's a 232 investigation that's been announced and this is the deadline, right? We had to quickly break down, okay, well, what does that mean for your company? What does that mean for the association and the industry? And so, you know, luckily, I have an amazing team here. We have two policy staffers. I have a policy background, and then our fourth staffer ran the publications section for ASAE for many, many years and is a gifted, gifted editor. And so the four of us together have been able to really quickly, pull together information and write surprisingly in-depth emails to our members. And I think that building that confidence in the association is both needed in a time of uncertainty, but I think it's going to be beneficial to the relationship we have with our members as well. We've had some members rejoin this year because they would get an email forwarded from another member, which they're not supposed to do, but we all know what happens, right? They would get an
Yeah.
email forwarded and they'd say, oh, this is really good. Like, I want this, right? And so we had some folks that actually came back to us after a couple years apart because they recognized the work that we're doing. And I will say, because we're an international association, we have a lot of different time zones. There's a trade case, an anti-dumping countervailing duty, ADCVD case that started last week. And I was taking phone calls at 10 p.m. from one of my Malaysian members, right? Like there's,
Yeah.
I think, an acknowledgement that internally that we need to be very reachable. Obviously, there are limits, right? Like that's not every night. But when something happens, like if I'm sitting at dinner and I get a couple board members texting me that they want to do a quick call, like yeah, obviously I'll make myself available because I never want them to wonder what we're doing or if we're up on things. So we've always done a weekly e-news to our members. That's sort of the things you need to know. And I feel like they get longer every year, but we've also been doing sort of special alerts as well. Like last week, I think we had to end up doing like 3 special alerts, which is way more than I would want to normally do. But we had some stuff that was happening that required it. But it's again always letting our companies know that we're on it. Like you don't have to be on it. We are. Like, and if you are on vacation, you can come back to your inbox and read the 1 or maybe 3 IWPA emails and go in and have a conversation with your boss and intelligently explain to them what's going on. So it's really making sure that what we're giving people is actionable.
Mm.
That's if I had to boil it down. Obviously, we're also doing a lot of policy work, like everybody in DC. We're lucky in that we've over years built really good relationships with a lot of regulatory agencies. So I think just on the 232 comments, we met with 5 different agencies within a couple weeks, which was a lot of Zoom time, but definitely worth it. We meet with embassies. We've been building our relationships with embassies here in town, both on some of the trade stuff, but also on just some general regulatory stuff that's happening internationally with the industry. And then, of course, with Congress. I mentioned we have 2 of our staff are lobbyists. So they are up on the Hill, bless them, far more than I would want to be. But it's one of those things that you know, you got to be here and you got to be doing the face-to-face chats and just helping people understand that we're not a boogeyman, right? Importers, it's a bad word these days in DC, but like we are American and international businesses that are providing a valuable service and products to the American consumer. And it's really just humanizing who we are to policymakers at the end of the day that I think is going to help us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's really, I think your approach is so admirable, and
Thank you.
hearing different stories from different organizations. Some are kind of putting out the fires, but they're forgetting to circle back and, keep those relationships with members and really, really convey what all that they're learning and all that they're doing. So it sounds like you're doing a great job at that.
Thank you.
It's my understanding that IWPA has also been collaborating with some and drawing support from some other consumer-based associations during this time. And I'm curious, how did that happen and how is that helping?
I know that IWPA is small and not as powerful as some other associations. So we are absolutely working with some of those more powerful associations. The National Association of Manufacturers has done some amazing work on some of the shipbuilding comments and policy that have come out. We've worked really closely with the RV folks, with a ton of the musical industry, musical instrument industry folks. It's really about just trying to find the people that are having the same problems that you are and figuring out, even if it's just information sharing. It's that
Mhm.
collaborative atmosphere that I think for us at least has always existed because we're used to having help to punch above our weight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's power in numbers, right? Yeah.
Yes, there absolutely is.
It's been a crazy time. What has the organization learned throughout this process? And has it influenced any change in kind of your day to day, how you do business, your approach to things, your perception of things? What are you thinking in regards to that?
I personally believe that it's important that people are able to recharge.
Mm,
Having said that, there's been a lot of policy releases and things happening that happen on weekends, that happen at 6 p.m., right? That happen really early in the morning. And so I sat our staff down and had a very like frank discussion with them that I still believe in work-life balance. And so we've got to figure out a way to make this workable so that all of us have a chance to, recharge. And so what I came up with and what we currently have is an on-call system for the weekends where two staff, because I like having, a backup. Two staff every weekend are on call. And so whoever's on call that weekend does a quick check-in on Friday where they look at what is the president's schedule, are there any court rulings that are expected, or have we been hearing any rumors of things that are coming this weekend that we might need to prepare for? And whoever is on call that weekend is responsible for keeping an eye on social media, quite frankly, on the White House, press pool reports, if that's applicable. And if something happens, those two staff members are responsible for sort of drafting up any news if it's needed. My hope is that we can get off of that system pretty quickly. I think once our 232 investigation comes out,
mm.
hopefully that will be the case, but we'll see. I'm
Right.
sorry. I know I sound tired when I say that.
I think there's a reason why. It makes complete sense that you would be exhausted. I mean, it's a lot, right? And
Yeah.
I was interviewing someone earlier and they said, gosh, the past couple months, it feels like a couple years. It's just been, the pace has been unprecedented and
Yes. Yes.
unexpected, not quite to this volume. So it's just been a learning curve for so many people on so many levels. But the name of this show is Save the Associations. And before we close, I'm curious to know what your advice is. What do you think the top priority should be for membership organizations right now who are in your same boat and trying to navigate this new norm? What should they be focused on to help save their associations from decline and ensure they continue to prosper?
I think this is a lesson I hope a lot of associations learned during COVID is when you're asking more of your employees, you need to give them more, whatever that looks like, right, within your resources. And for us, it's, giving more time off so that you can really unplug. It's being incredibly flexible with people that want to work from home. It's summer Fridays for us,
Yeah.
being able to release at 1 p.m. Like
Mhm.
I know that times are stressful, and I know I am asking more of my staff than I did a year ago. And I want them to feel appreciated with whatever I can give them. And so taking care of your staff is something that is so, so important right now.
Right.
The second thing is communication with your members.
Mm.
Businesses in the trade space at least want to feel like they're not alone right now because it can be a very isolating experience to open the paper or listen to a podcast or the news or get on Twitter and all you see is hatred of imports and how you're ruining America and all these terrible things, and you're just running your family business, right? And so I want my members to feel supported. I always want them to feel like my association has my back, right? If nothing else, at the end of the day, they're behind me, beside me, and in front of me, depending on the situation. My part of the reason I am in the association world is my dad owned his own business growing up. He was a sole proprietor and he didn't have a trade association. And I watched how hard it was for him to have to negotiate regulations and to think about all of this other stuff outside of just running your day-to-day business. And so I have always in my career tried to support businesses so that they can focus on their day-to-day and let the association take care of this other stuff. And so I think especially now, especially in the atmosphere that we're in, from a economic uncertainty, from a consumer, concern, from a news and tariff and regulatory, I want my businesses, whether they're small, medium, large, extra large, I want them to feel like they can call me and we are always, always here for them, that we're keeping an eye on the stuff that they don't have time to do. And so it's all about communicating with them so that they never ever worry that something is getting missed.
I love that. And it's really inspirational, Ashley. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I
My
like to
pleasure.
end these interviews with a little dance because you've been through a lot and I know you're tired, but will you join me in some dance moves?
Well, I am a musical theater kid, so I have to do jazz hands. That's
Oh
required.
yes. I love it. It is my great honor to be joined now by Sherry Ann Kelly from the American Chamber of Commerce Executives. And Sherry Ann, why don't you say a quick hello, quick introduction for our audience?
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Just really excited to be able to talk about the future of associations and membership organizations, and I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Well, fantastic. This is a time of incredible change and challenge, which of course is the topic of this show. And I'm curious to know what ACCE is observing right now. So, are you seeing some pessimistic outlooks, optimistic outlooks? What are some trends and sentiments that are occurring within the business world right now?
Sure. So I think this is a big time of uncertainty across the board. A lot of organizations are feeling uncertainty, businesses are feeling uncertainty. It's interesting. We have a CEO confidence index out right now in the field, a survey instrument for chamber CEOs. So we'll have more data about that soon. I'm looking forward to seeing those results. With a lot of businesses, they are being more hesitant to make investments that historically they would have made. So I think there are some investment decisions that are on pause. But interestingly, it's sort of not a one size fits all across the country. There are some industries in some regions that are flourishing right now. So I can't say there's a blanket statement that's relevant to every single community, but there's definitely been uncertainty. Everybody feels like things are changing quickly. The pace of change is unbelievable. And then how do you really navigate that uncertainty? That's been kind of a core focus for ACCE, is how do we help our members navigate these times that feel unprecedented and a little more turbulent than usual.
Right. And I'm sure you saw that the International Chamber of Commerce did a survey in April following the announcement of new tariff measures, and businesses globally, of course, at that time were reporting concerns. Do you feel like the climate has changed at all since April, or do you feel it's worse, better, somehow different?
You know, I think again, there's not this blanket one size fits all. With things like, for example, tariffs, right? We've got tariffs that have been implemented across the board. Those have huge impacts to a variety of businesses and industries. We haven't seen how this impacts the average consumer just yet, and that's going to have, I think, bigger impacts to the economy, and we'll see sort of some shifts there. It's what's interesting is that, especially for chambers of commerce, a lot of them are using this as an opportunity, as kind of a strategic advantage to kind of double down on the work that they're doing, which I think is kind of brilliant. Chambers are considered these trusted sources, not just for their member businesses, but for their entire communities. In fact, we conducted a public opinion poll with the Harris poll that looked at perceptions of chambers of commerce. 81% of US adults think that chambers are trusted resources and partners for business. So they've got this trust that sort of supports them from the get-go. Because of that, chambers are seen as these sort of calms at the center of storms. Their businesses turn to them for trusted information. Businesses turn to them to help navigate through the uncertainty that we're all experiencing. So because of that, I love watching organizations that kind of double down and invest more into their future. They don't necessarily retreat during uncertainty, that they actually take a look and say, what can we focus on now to provide the best resources for our community, but also to grow our organization as we look forward. If they're sort of hyper focused on those areas, being a solution center, providing insight to their membership, they have this great opportunity to actually grow themselves and give a lot of strength and stability to their communities. We saw this during the COVID-19 pandemic. There were a lot of organizations that doubled down. They said, we're not going to retreat here. We're going to really build for our future. And they actually built back better. So that's, I think, an opportunity for all associations to consider is, how do you want to build for a future, even during times of uncertainty?
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I do think that anytime there's a tremendous challenge, that opens up a tremendous opportunity for membership organizations to really align with their member needs and be responsive to member needs. So I agree 100%. And I'm curious to know how ACCE is helping chambers navigate during this time of uncertainty.
That's, like I said, that's sort of a core focus for us right now.
Mhm.
When the loudest fringe voices are yelling and competing for airtime, people are actually seeking steady, calm, thoughtful, intentional leadership. And frankly, in a lot of communities, that's exactly what chambers of commerce are. They're solutions focused, pragmatic. And that's something that's needed. That's a voice that's really needed at the table. So we're supporting a lot of chambers in figuring out how to make sure that their voice is heard. In fact, we published a report called Leading Through Uncertainty. It's an issues management playbook for chambers of commerce. It looks at how to decide if you're going to weigh in on issues or not, because during these turbulent times, that's a really big and important question. And sometimes doing nothing or saying nothing is the right thing to do. So we focus on what are the tools and resources and skill sets that you need right now in a world that looks like this. It's about not having knee-jerk reactions, the need for crystal clear communication, not leaving anything to chance. When all these inflammatory messages are floating around out there, you want to continue to stay focused on your own mission, not getting pulled into arguments that really aren't your lane. And also sort of the need to humanize your story. That's what elevates narratives above all of the fringe and the noise that's out there. Do you have a compelling story that puts a human face to the issues that you're putting forward? If you're really focused on having the most impact for your members, having the most impact for your community, that's the best differentiator and value proposition that you can bring to the table, especially in times like these.
Absolutely. And I love the playbook idea. That's brilliant because it scares me when I see organizations really pulling back and doing nothing or just kind of freezing in these times of real challenge and change. So the playbook, I'm sure, has helped a lot of chambers navigate forward as well.
That's been, I think, a strong asset, and also just how to communicate and navigate during these times when our audiences are so polarized. I think that's another tool that is so helpful to any membership organization, helping your members figure out how do you get through a landscape that looks like it does.
Right, right. So ACCE completed the Horizons 2035 report, which sounds far away, but it's only 10 years, right?
Absolutely.
And it was investigating the forces that would shape the future of chambers. And I'm curious, what are some of the things that made the list?
Ah, I love talking about this. This was a really fun project. We wanted to sort of take a step back, look 10 years out and say, what are the major influences that are going to shape the future, not just of chambers, but of businesses and communities, so that we can be a little bit more forward thinking and help our members prepare for the future. I know other organizations like ASAE has done something very similar. What's great is that any association can do this for their members, right? Help their members navigate the future. So we used foresight tools. We hired one of the country's leading futurists. We had more than 1,000 chambers touch this research somewhere along the way. There are a couple of things that came out of it that I think are really interesting, timely, and exciting to think about. One of those influences is political and social fragmentation. So this is only going to continue for the foreseeable future. That's a big, big voice. So what that means for us is that our voice needs to be in the mix of that fragmentation. You know, there's the old government relations saying that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably on the menu. And that holds true. And we need to make sure that our voices are getting heard. Again, people are seeking this rational, logical leadership, and that's an opportunity for us to shine through. But that also sort of leads to another influence, which is that chambers have the opportunity to be unifiers. And I get really excited about that. So when we talk about unifying, it doesn't mean we get everybody to align and have the same perspective on an issue, but it's that we can find ways to disagree better. That you can not agree on what policy or what outcomes you want to have, but everybody can get along better. So we're seeing chambers do things like training for civility in their communities, helping their employers train for civility in their workforce. There's a great survey, the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's a global public opinion poll, looks at trust in major institutions. Business is overwhelmingly the most trusted of all of the major institutions. But also in their study, they showed that business is one of only 3 segments of the population that are considered unifiers. So they are seen as forces that can bring people together, whereas so many other people and individuals and institutions are seen as forces that pull people apart. So that's a really exciting opportunity for chambers and for other organizations as well. Like I said, any association can do something like this, look at the future of whatever your industry is or your profession, and help your members navigate their way through that. It's a really good time to kind of pick our heads up and go through this type of exercise.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So things like civility and planning for a very unpredictable political, social climate. It's kind of fascinating. And I'm curious, do you think that's going to challenge or change the way that chambers advocate going forward? Obviously, yes, you're training for civility, but can you think of other ways it might challenge or change advocacy efforts?
Oh, absolutely. I think organizations, chambers, all organizations have to be really nimble. Issues are going to pop up, at any moment. Things, change. The shifts in our dynamics change very, very quickly. I think it's critical to stay mission aligned. Make sure that you don't get pulled into issues that don't align with what your members really want you to be advocating for. I mean, advocacy itself is sort of changing right before our eyes. I think state and
Yeah.
local government relations is going to be so much more important now and moving forward. The pace of legislation and regulation is so much quicker, and the impacts at the state and local levels are enormous. I think trust is going to be a huge factor for government affairs. Trust is sort of that's your currency, and that's going to be what sets you apart when people are looking for advocacy partners, or if you're talking to policymakers, they want to know that you're that trusted source. I think because of that, tools like grassroots advocacy are going to be even more powerful than ever. Sort of the closer you get to an individual human, the more likable and trustworthy they are. So having your members speak on your behalf, that's going to have a lot more impact. For chambers of commerce, local businesses are among some of the most trusted voices. So that's a huge asset to chambers. Um, People make decisions based on emotion and not fact. So kind of going back to this idea of humanizing your issues, I think that's going to continue to be a really strong tool for organizations. If you can put a human face to the policy issues that you're working on, it's much more relatable. And again, people, they'll open up to your idea when they hear a story that evokes an emotion because it's got that human element to it. And then after people hear the story, you bring in your data and facts to back up the opinion that people are starting to see. I think all of those pieces are going to play a big role. And we've got this misinformation, mistrust world right now. So what is real? What's truth? What's trusted information? Just your trust is your asset in the political arena. And I think that's going to be maybe the bottom line for all organizations, is ensuring that your association and your members are trusted and trusted sources.
Yes, absolutely. And, in this time of AI and, all that's happening in terms of digital and cyber advancements, I think to your point, that need to really connect, that human connection and seeing humanity of organizations and leaders is definitely going to rise in importance. So it's fascinating to kind of think about, right, and plan for the future. And it's admirable that you're already doing that work and projecting out on some of these trends. So the name of this show is obviously Save the Association. So I'm curious to know, what do you consider the top priority for membership organizations here and now? What would help save chambers and associations from decline and ensure they continue to prosper?
It's a great question. It's something I think every association should be asking itself. What can we do to make sure that we're relevant, not just now, but far into the future? Uh, I think it boils down to value proposition. You have to be providing just incomparable value to your members. What are their greatest challenges? Are you solving the biggest problems that they are facing? I feel like that's the best value proposition, the best return on investment that your members can get. If you're the solution center, if you're thinking about the challenges that they face now, but also the challenges that they're going to face down the road, you're solving those, you're not going to have a hard time sharing value, and people will get it. I think that value takes a lot of different forms. People are craving an in-person, in real life experience right now, but that means that our meetings and events have to be hyper valuable. It's not just about getting together for mixers. We really have to be showing exactly what kind of solutions they're going to get out of those programs. So that's one area that I think things are changing. It's really important that we meet people where they are. It's if you're not going to be able to attend an in-person event, how else can you get training, information, and resources? So we're really excited to be able to offer online on-demand programming for our members. We've got micro certifications that are stackable. I think those types of activities, meeting people where they are so that they can take advantage of the benefits that you offer anytime. People have kind of round the clock work days now. So a lot of times they want to do their training or get their resources and information in the evenings, on the weekends. Can you help them achieve that? And it's kind of a made to order world. People want this customizable, special, just the way I like it type of membership. So is your membership speaking to that? Can people pick and choose what they want to take advantage of so that they have a customizable experience? And then just thinking about value proposition, one of the best ways that I think we can grow as organizations is to widen the tent and getting more people involved in our industries and our associations. So are there ways to lower the barrier to entry so that you can get more people in the mix of your association, and then find ways to kind of upsell them into other aspects of the organization, or have ways that they can buy things ad hoc from your benefits list, but it's getting more people to be a part of your organization. And so can you either have a free membership, a low cost membership, something that gets them in the door, so that they get hooked? I think it all comes down to value proposition, but what that value proposition looks like, it can vary, across the board in lots of different ways.
I agree. And I started out my career in chambers of commerce, so I agree with you. They're kind of like camp counselors. They're very resilient, very creative, adaptable. They go where the market needs them. And I know for a fact Chamber of Commerce executives love to have fun as well. And so I like to end these shows with just some dance moves to say, hey, we're doing well in a time of real challenge and change. So please join me in some dancing. Yes. All right.
And I regularly embarrass my 17-year-old by promising that I'll do the Cabbage Patch. So I have to
Oh, wow.
I have to do a little
Okay.
bit of that just for my 17-year-old.
I love that. I love that. Fantastic. Thank you, Sherry, for being on the show. It was fantastic advice and appreciate all that ACCE is doing.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm very honored to welcome Veda Garcia to Save the Associations from the Consumer Technology Association. Veda, welcome. Can you give a few words of introduction?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you, Sarah, for having me on this show. Yeah, so to start, so Consumer Technology Association, we are based in the Washington, D.C. area. We represent about 1,200 members, give or take, that are spread out throughout the United States and in every facet of the technology ecosystem. We also own and produce CES, which is one of the largest technology trade shows in the world in Las Vegas every January. As well, it's a global show, so about 40% of attendees from this past year are actually from outside the United States. But yes, I'm Veda Garcia. I'm a specialist for policy and government affairs at CTA, specifically working on the trade policy portfolio, which has been nothing short of crazy recently.
And that's what we're going to talk about, right?
Yes.
But yes, I think most people know you, your association for the CES. It's a pretty cool show. It's kind of on my bucket list to come check it out sometime.
Yes.
But let's dive into the serious stuff. So yes, CTA has been busy fighting legislation, advocating on behalf of members in recent months in light of executive orders and all the things. So could you give our audience a little bit of an overview to some of the most pressing issues and top concerns for CTA right now?
Yes, of course. Well, like you mentioned, I mean, tariffs have been just top of mind for all our members, because regardless of what kind of technology company you are, I mean, getting your global supply chain in order, that's going to impact everyone. And so, kind of since January 20th, that's kind of where all the focus has been. But as well, I mean, like our CEO likes to say, every company is a tech company. And so we have different types of companies, such as those in digital health, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, as well as artificial intelligence. And all those sectors as well have their own challenges with regulation and making sure that we really have the innovation framework set for those sectors. But I would say, just top of mind really is trade and tariffs right now.
Right. Okay, so specifically, how have tariffs impacted your members?
I mean, I would say probably like for most companies, it's just all the uncertainty that's going around. So it's one day there is tariffs, and then it's scaling back, and then there's more tariffs. And so it's really just, having to battle kind of the patchwork, I would call it, of the tariffs, as well. We have the tariffs that came on with the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which also that's currently being held up in court. But as well, there's other authorities such as the Section 232 tariffs. And for the viewers who don't know, Section 232, that's whenever the Commerce Department initiates a national security investigation into certain sectors. So we've seen autos, copper, timber, lumber, pharmaceuticals. The one that's most important for technology companies is the Section 232 investigation on semiconductors. And so that's really kind of top of mind, and we're monitoring that closely. But it's really, we don't know what's going to happen. And so it's just all that uncertainty, really.
Yeah. And that that I'm sure impacts your job as well as the association as a whole, right? When you don't know what's going to be happening and you're
Yes.
just, I'm sure you're spending a ton of time just trying to stay informed and stay on top of things, right?
Yes, exactly. And I mean, as soon as we know information, we have to let our members know. And so it's kind of like informing everyone of what's going on in the latest, even though those updates can be several every single week. So
Yeah. So let's unpack that just a little bit. How is, what are the various ways CTA is keeping members informed, helping to reassure them at this time of uncertainty? What have you had to do differently? How you doing it?
yes. Back before January 20th, we had a trade policy working group, which is for our members that are impacted by trade and tariffs and just want to inform our advocacy and, provide feedback on those different advocacy points, whether it's with the different agencies or with Congress. As well, we have a Trade Watchers newsletter that I personally write every week. It's probably delivered to about 300 members at this point, but we send it out every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Just letting members know what CTA is doing and as well the different top line news point articles that are going around. But as well, I mean, since January 20th, it's been impacting a lot more people. And so now we've started doing kind of these emergency virtual roundtables that are only open to CTA members, but we bring on experts to let them know how, this is impacting, how this is developing. And it's really, we like to keep those informal. So it's just, we encourage our members to ask questions. In fact, there was one webinar that I was moderating, and I only got to ask 3 questions, and the rest of the time was for our members to pose questions to the experts. But as well, I mean, we just wrapped up our first annual trade week earlier this month, or yeah, in May. And so there were members that flew in from other parts of the US, but as well members that are based here in Washington, D.C. And we took to our members talk to the Media Roundtable or to the Hill and to different government agencies and think tanks to kind of get that firsthand look of what the conversations are looking like here in DC.
I love that. And you said something so incredibly key that I just want to point out to our audience. You said several times we're doing this for members or members only. And I love that you're doing that because it's providing real value, return on investment to your members, not just anybody and everybody, but really seeking to provide an advantage to members. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, all of our resources, all of our analysis and everything, it's really for members first and foremost. And they help shape our advocacy as well. And so I kind of see it as like a two-way communication, basically. We inform them, but as well, we like to hear from them as well on how this is impacting them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So some of the associations tuning in might be questioning exactly when to speak up, jump into controversial or heavily contested issues on behalf of members. And, even tariffs sometimes can be, one of those things. People can be afraid of, well, if we speak up or we speak out, then we're seen as political. So, what's your advice when associations are worried about this?
Yes. Well, I mean, I will say CTA, we've been very vocal on the tariffs. That's just kind of something that we see as a core principle to our association. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, every technology company has a global supply chain. I mean, just inherently being part of the tech industry. And so we really do need our trading partners and allies in order to make innovation flourish. And so we have, and you can see it on our website, these core principles, these policy priorities that we have, and we don't really stray away from that. And so when it comes to trade, I mean, we know that tariffs are taxes, and that's something that we stand by. As well, we also believe that we need trading partners in order to make it work in the global supply chain. And so that's something that we, it doesn't matter who's in the White House, it's something that we'll keep advocating for. So, for example, in early April, there was a resolution that was introduced by Senators Tim Kaine of Virginia and Rand Paul of Kentucky. And it was basically to end the emergency against Canada on the fentanyl imports. And, we know and we have a CEO that, we believe that Canada is a trading partner. They're an ally, they're our neighbor. There's no reason why we should be, declaring tariffs on them for this emergency. And so we were the first association to support that resolution. I don't know if we were the only ones, but we were definitely the first ones to do so. And that's something that ended up actually passing the Senate. Didn't go anywhere in the House, but it's, just important to know that you have those priorities. And it's really the members, they want to see that out of their association. And, since then and even before, our members just constantly tell us like what a great job we're doing, that we're, being the face of this. And it's just not something that we shy away from.
That's wonderful. So this has been just a chaotic, crazy time. And I think it's important to pause and just kind of say, okay, what are we learning from this whole experience as an organization? And I'm curious, within CTA, has anything, changed? Has this changed your approach to advocacy, your approach to member engagement and deliverables, your approach to operations, and just is it disrupting your organization in any way? And if so, how are you responding?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, just on these past few months, it feels like it's been years. But with everything that's going on with the tariffs, we kind of see that or what I've seen at least, is that it's truly a full association effort. So, back before things were crazy, I mean, we always knew, who was marketing, who was in marketing, who was in communications, who could help us on this. But really, once this issue kind of blew up,
Mhm.
marketing, communications, the membership department, they all are pulling in and like, how can we help? And so a call to action that we have to our members right now is tell us your tariff story. And we need the helps from the membership department to actually get that message out to our members, not just those that are in the trade policy working group, communications as well. I mean, we've been having a lot of statements and press releases if you go to our website and see, and as well marketing, just to make sure that all that is going well. But in addition, we have a research study that we've updated now 3 times on how the proposed Trump tariffs could increase prices for consumer technology products. And that's something that we have been needing research on board for. The first iteration went out in October, had to update again in January, just updated again in May, just because the tariffs have been, all different types of, you know, different types of hikes and everything. So it really is a true association effort.
Yeah. And I'm so curious also how this has worked out as far as a board dynamic and a staff dynamic as well. Do you find that you're asking your board more often to get more involved in certain issues and help navigate this time of change? Or has the board entrusted the staff to do it? I'm just curious what that dynamic's been like too.
Yeah, I mean, the board has been super helpful when it comes to our tariff advocacy. I mean, those that are on the board, they have technology companies of their own, and this is something that impacts them as well. And so obviously they love everything we're doing. In fact, we created little no tariff stickers or tariffs are taxes stickers, handed them out to the board who loved that idea. But they've been very, very involved and wanting to see us do more and advocate more on behalf of them and the rest of the rest of the members on tariffs.
Right. You're doing an amazing job. So, as you know, the name of this show is Save the Association. So, what do you consider the top priority for membership organizations here and now in this time of crazy? What would help save the associations from decline and ensure they continue to prosper?
I mean, that's a very great question. I mean, I would say honestly, just keep focusing on the members. I mean, that's the reason that they're a part of association, and just having those lines of communication always open. I mean, like I mentioned, we're constantly asking for what's your tariff story? We want to know how can we help you? And so it's really, making sure that whether it's someone in membership, whether it's someone in research, having those lines open and, how can we help us help you kind of idea, and just always putting it on them. Of course, some members are shy, but we have, depending on their story, we kind of take whatever option that they want to give us. So if they want to be anonymous, we'll remain anonymous. But just always letting us know how we can help them.
Yeah. And I gotta ask as a follow-up to that, Veda, it sounds like your members are so incredibly appreciative. Do you feel this has directly impacted the member relationship and is it actually improving member engagement?
Yes, I would say definitely has improved member engagement. I mean, even just on the virtual roundtables that we host for only members, I would actually say before the election, the virtual roundtables that we would host on trade and tariffs would range about maybe 30 to 50 members would come on. But since Trump has kind of made tariffs a focal point of the campaign and as well of his administration, those numbers have kind of skyrocketed to over 100 every time.
Wow.
As well, just asking more questions about what does this mean and everything. Because tariffs, they're going to increase costs for our businesses. And as well, I mean, 80% of CTA members are considered small businesses or startups. And so that's really impactful to them. So we definitely have seen more engagement on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate you being on this show, and I like to end these shows with some dance moves. Our audience just loves it. It's fun. We're dealing with heavy things, so please join me in just a little dance. You're doing great on behalf of your members, and um, it's thriving in a time of incredible change. So hats
Yes.
off to the Consumer Technology Association. Thank you, Veda, for all you're doing to help save the associations.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
America's healthcare distributors connect 1,200 manufacturers to 330,000 sites of care, like pharmacies, hospitals, doctors' offices, and long-term care facilities. We move 10 million medicines each day, enabling care in communities across America. Distributors buy medicines directly from pharmaceutical manufacturers, taking physical possession, legal ownership, and assuming the financial risk, all while operating on the lowest margins in healthcare. We are health delivered.
It is my honor to now welcome Patrick Kelly to the show from the Healthcare Distribution Alliance. Patrick, why don't you give a brief introduction so our audience can meet you?
Well, certainly. Thank you for having me this afternoon. Patrick Kelly, I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer for the Healthcare Distribution Alliance. We are a trade association representing pharmaceutical wholesalers in the U.S. My primary job is to be the advocate for the industry in front of Congress, in front of state legislatures, and other regulatory agencies here in Washington, as well as in the states.
Yeah, a very, very important job, undoubtedly, and a very busy job right now.
Yes.
So, something I really admire is that HDA promises to be there for its members in times of calm and crisis. I mean, that's such beautiful language, such a beautiful promise. But I'm curious to know, how has HDA delivered on this promise and helped members through this time of really recent radical change?
Well, again, it's something we are continually adapting to. I wouldn't say that we're currently in a state of crisis. but we are definitely not in a state of calm.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I don't really recall being in a state of calm recently, but it's something I think all associations, they rise to the occasion that their industry is confronted with. And in times of crisis, and I'll go back to COVID, when we locked down for COVID and the entire staff and the entire industry had to shut down, that was a crisis, and we had to adapt very quickly. We had to understand the capabilities of our industry. We had to understand kind of what the government was asking the industry to do. So we became kind of a conduit between our members and the government, and they were trying to figure out how to do this as well. There was no playbook for a national shutdown. So adapting to those times of crisis was something that we had to commit to doing. We did it on the fly. There are, I think that's a model for maybe future incidents. Hopefully we do not have another public health emergency like we did with COVID that resulted in the entire country shutting down. But if it were to happen, I think there's at least a little bit of institutional memory here as to kind of what we would need to do to get things up and running and who we would need to reach out to.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And so during this time, you are hopefully, comforting your members in a variety of ways. What are some of those ways that's happening?
Well, again, I think it's primarily it's being that conduit for information, and so we can triage some of the calls that are coming in either from the government themselves or from the media, trying to understand what's happening, where are the drugs, what is the current status of the emergency. I think this is particularly true as we approach hurricane season, and there are likely to be disruptions to medical supplies in key areas around the country during a hurricane season. And so those are types of instances where the industry will step up. We'll work with first responders. We'll work with emergency management authorities at the state and federal level to make sure that the medicines that are needed to treat the individuals in that area, that affected area, arrive and are there as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, super important work. I'm curious to know specifically, how are tariffs impacting your members in the United States and globally?
Great question. Right now, tariffs, and I'm speaking today, and things may change, but tariffs are currently not being imposed on pharmaceutical products per se. The president has indicated that, and again, just an announcement yesterday, that they are going to look at re-implementing the reciprocal tariffs that he talked about on April 2nd on a list of key countries that he's basically included in that initial April 2nd list of countries for reciprocal tariffs, trying to basically level the playing field on the tariffs that they may impose on U.S. products. So far, again, pharmaceutical products have been exempt from those tariffs. He has talked about sectoral tariffs on particular sectors like oil or not oil, but steel and aluminum, copper, some of those sectoral tariffs that have been imposed on certain industries. Possibly using sectoral tariff on pharmaceutical products at some point in the future. I think he does understand that, if tariffs are being used to try to encourage companies to build facilities in the United States to develop products here, that will take a significant amount of time for those companies to basically, put facilities in place, build them up. It takes years and in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars to build these facilities. So that can't happen overnight. So I think they're giving a little bit of lead time to the industry to basically either commit to building facilities in the US or then potentially facing tariffs. And I think the number he used today in a press conference was as high as 200% for products that are entering the country from countries outside the US.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So day to day, your job is changing, right? And it's
Hour to hour.
hour to hour.
Yeah.
And so you're always getting new information. And yes, that makes you such a critical in such a critical role right now for your association and for your members to keep them informed.
Yeah.
Back to your previous point. So HDA issued a statement in May, I believe, on the most favored nation executive order. And why is that particular order a concern? And what is HDA doing to advocate for change?
So great question. We still literally are trying to figure out what the impact of a most favored or switch to a most favored nation pricing construct would look like for pharmaceutical products in the US. We're working very closely with the administration to understand, number one, their objectives, and then to better understand how that would be implemented if the manufacturers agree to basically bring products down in price to a most favored nation price. I think what the president is trying to do here is to say, listen, I think a lot of developed countries have kind of taken the U.S. investment in pharmaceutical research and development for granted. They have basically put in place barriers to fair pricing in those countries, and therefore the companies that manufacture and develop those products are left with, we're the only remaining open marketplace, so they can secure the resources they need to invest in research and development. And I think the president has stated, and he stated in his press conference in March, or I'm sorry, in May, that he's trying to equalize the playing field a little bit. So, not that we're going to try to import foreign prices into the U.S., but basically, if the manufacturers would agree to charge more to foreign countries, that basically they would generate more revenue in those countries, and at the same time, if those revenues were to increase in foreign countries, they could reduce the cost of those products in the U.S. to reach some type of an equalization between the U.S. and the OECD countries. These are the developed countries that he referenced in his executive order. So again, we're still in the process of determining how that program would be implemented. I think they're still in the process of figuring out exactly how to do it. It's not turnkey. It's not a very simplistic process, but I think they are committed to helping to reduce prices and improve access for medicines.
Right. So for our audience, who are other association professionals just like yourself, I think others are trying to figure out how to navigate the day-to-day. And just curious, have recent events changed the way HTA operates? Does advocacy, how you're managing your day-to-day?
Yeah, Sarah, it's also a great question, and it has. And I think it's primarily the political dynamic that exists in Washington today. You have the Republicans that control the White House, they control both chambers of commerce, and they are essentially operating as a unified party. So while we historically had spent a lot of time and effort advocating within the Congress, and in some cases also in the states and various legislative levels, realizing that we have to find, consensus-based efforts to move policies that affect or can complement the industry. Now we have essentially, a unified party here that is basically an idea that, starts in the White House, will immediately move to the Congress with commitment from both majorities in the Congress to agree to move that piece of legislation. And the one big, beautiful bill that just passed this past weekend is an example of that, where the president had an objective. He told the Congress he wanted it passed. Both Republican majorities agreed to much of that package, and it was moved through in, I think, record time with, again, straight party line vote, but that's the dynamic. So what we've done to adapt to that is realize that we've got to work more closely with the administration than we have in the past. We've usually put a lot of our stock in working closely with Congress and developing relationships and educating members of Congress. And I think that is now transitioned slightly to be more of a focus on working closely with this administration in the various, not only at the White House, but also at the cabinet agencies as well. So again, just a slight tweak in focus, but it's a different dynamic.
Oh, undoubtedly, yes. Well, I gotta ask you, Patrick, do you like to dance?
I'm not a dancer, Sarah, but I understand that this is part of the process. So
This is part of the process.
Yeah.
I like to end these interviews because you are doing a great job. You're leading day to day. You're changing. There's a lot happening. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And we want to inspire our audience and give them a little bit of entertainment. So I like to end these interviews with just a little bit of dancing to say congratulations on all you're doing.
Do I have to dance now? I think the one dance that I am highly capable of doing is, I think, what we call the gopher dance, where I sit, don't really move my body, but I just do the Caddyshack gopher dance.
I like it.
I do know the sprinkler dance.
Oh, ooh,
other than that, I don't want to flex. I didn't want to flex on anybody, but I'm relatively limited repertoire dance skills.
You surprised me. You brought your game. I love it. But these are heavy times, and it's important to take a moment to celebrate, have some fun. So thank
Yep.
you for indulging me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being on the show. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And all you're doing to save the associations. Thank you for tuning in to Save the Associations, and special thanks to our presenters for sharing their stories and ideas and best practices. This is a critical time for associations right now. It's a time to innovate. It's a time to lead the way, to get comfortable with disruption because we're being disrupted. We need to ensure that we are aligned with and serving our members to the best of our ability. And hopefully you learned some strategies for doing just that today. Save the Associations is brought to you by XYZ University, which is in the process of launching 2 amazing events that I need to tell you about very briefly. The first one is that XYZ University is launching an entirely new division of its company called Membership U. The first platform delivering courses, training, and community and certification entirely for membership professionals. So if you work for an association, you want to learn more about what works with membership and gain more best practices and training, Membership U is for you. Here's more information on how to access Membership U. Also, coming this fall in October in Washington, D.C., is the Next Gen Now Summit. XYZ University has brought together thought leaders from all over, representing all industries, notable individuals who are leading the way. They are disruptors, they are innovators, and they're seeing great results in terms of paving the way for the next generation right now. Here's where to register. You don't want to miss it. The Next Gen Now Summit coming to DC in October. See you there. And once again, thank you for tuning in, and thanks for all you do to help save the associations.